In this video, we're going to go over setting up a document for the nameplate. Once you open Enroute, which should be on your desktop, if not, you can go to your Start menu and type in Enroute, and you want to open up Enroute 7. You can go to File New, or you can select the File New icon up in the top left corner. The first step is to define your plate. That's the piece of material that you'll be etching your name into. We are going to start, and you may need to edit this depending on the size of your name. We're going to start with a width of 15, a height of 5. Now, when we're talking about the width, that's the length of the board, but in CNC terms, we're looking at width. Height would be the width of the board. In the CNC machine, it's going to be height. And our thickness, you're going to set to 0.75. The other thing that's important is that the surface is set to the top of the plate. That's where we're going to zero the tool when we go to make this. So 15 by 5, 0.75 for thickness, origin set at top of plate. So we'll hit OK. Here is our document. So we have our 15 by 5. You can see up here I have rulers set up. If you don't have rulers showing, you can go to View and you can select rulers. We can add guidelines similar to what we have in Corel, so I can drag from the ruler up there if I want to drop a guideline, in the center of my document. If I want to use margins, it's really helpful to use like some half-inch guidelines around the edge, because if we're routing an edge, it's typically going to be no more than a half an inch. And that way, you want to keep your graphics, your text inside of that box at all times, so we don't hit that when we do our routing. After we have some guidelines set up, I'm going to go and put a piece of text in here. So right there you can see there's the text tool, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to just click on the screen. This, you might put a sports team here, you might put your last name here, just come up with something. I'm going to start, I'm just going to use the word sample. So I'll type that in. You can highlight it after you make it, and then if you want to change the font, you can go through and pick different fonts depending on what you want it to look like. So have some fun picking a font. Once you're happy with your font, if you want to make the text bigger, you can do that. You can also do things like change the spacing between your text. So depending on what it looks like, you might make the letters a little bit farther apart or closer together. You can stretch the text itself. Alright, so the first option I showed you was just the character spacing. Okay, so let's say I take that back to 0. Let's say I just want to stretch the whole letter itself. I can put that in. So there's lots of different text editing tools you can do. So if I'm happy with this, I'm going to hit close, and if I select it, I can move it around and get it kind of roughly centered in there. I'm going to take this guideline and move that to 2.5. That's where that should be on that document. And then at this point, the tool I like to use is called your precision input, activate precision input. So you can hit F2 on your keyboard or go to the view menu and select. And with my piece of text selected, so with nothing selected, you see nothing happens up here. But once I select that piece of text, I could scale it at this point. So if I decide I need to make it a little bit smaller, like that's pretty tight on my half-inch margin. So I might say, let's see what it looks like at 13.5. A little bit smaller there. Now it's not in the middle anymore, so I'm going to go to the move option. And when you go to move, by default this is selected bottom left corner. You want to click the center point, and then I'm going to type in 7.5. My document's 15, so 7.5 is half of that, and my document height is 5, so I'm going to put in 2.5 there and hit enter. That's going to center that. Now, one of the things to consider when you center this is that you have this drop on the P there. So if we were to maybe bring down some guidelines and drop them an inch in, and then we click on this, I can use the arrow keys to kind of bump that down. And if you think about when you used to write, in elementary school, and you had the ground plane or the grass line and the ground line and the skyline. We're looking at, I'm centering that text kind of in between there. Now that P drops down below, so I'd want to watch that that doesn't get much closer to my outside margin, but that should be fine. But that's something to consider. Instead of just exactly centering it up and down, you may want to tweak that so that the text itself looks centered on there. Once you're happy with your text placement and text size, we're ready to create a toolpath here. So we will go and select our piece of text, and we're going to use the toolpath drop down there to select engraving. It's going to convert to curves, which means it's no longer going to be a text. It's going to be lines and arcs. We're going to hit yes there. And we're going to select from the list here, you're going to pick a conic tool. And you're going to come up with 90 and 120 degree. We're using the 90 degree conic tool, so you double click it to put it up here in your order. Now, the tool itself will specify how deep it goes. So the wider my text is out here, like this part of the S, it will go deeper in. The thinner the area, the less depth it will have. This depth is the maximum depth you're going to allow it to go. My board is 0.75. I'm not going to let it go any deeper than 0.4. That looks pretty good. Unless you have some really wide text, 0.4 typically looks pretty good. Now I need to edit some of these settings. So go to edit, and the first thing I'm going to check is my number of passes. If I let it go one pass, it's going to be rather rough. So I'm going to select at least 3 passes, and one of those will be a final pass. So I'm going to select this. Final pass is similar to when we rip at the table saw and we go to the joiner and we take a little bit off. Final pass, I'm going to do 0.01 and then hit the enter key. So that last pass is going to be a very small cleanup pass, and it should reduce the amount of sanding you need to do. Next is feeds and speeds. So when I go in, my feed rate currently is 0, so it wouldn't do anything. When I'm running text, I typically run at 100 inches per minute. When I'm plunging, it's usually half my feed rate, so I'll do 50 inches per minute. Final pass, I usually go about half speed as well, so I'll do 50 inches per minute there. And spindle speed, we run it up at full spindle speed, which is 18,000. Okay, so feed rate 100, final pass 50, plunge rate 50, and 18,000. That's all you have to set in here, and you're ready to hit OK. At this point, we're going to select 3D engrave. That's what's going to allow it to go down based upon the width of our text, and I'll hit OK, and it's going to generate those toolpaths for me. So you can see what's happening there. That's the center line of the toolpath. We want to simulate this next, so we're going to go to the machining options up here, and we're going to say simulate 3D. It's going to take you to a perspective view. You're going to hit OK on this. You're going to hit the light bulb and then hit play. And it's just showing you what it's doing. This will be the same order of operations when we run it in the machine. And then we can kind of move around it. If you hold the shift key down, you can orbit, you can zoom in and check and make sure it actually looks good on all those different points in your text. Alright, so this looks pretty nice. So I'm going to double click on where it says perspective up here and then click back on the top view. And I'm going to close this simulate 3D option. Now, at this point, you're going to want to save your file. So, save your file, put this in, whatever works for you. It should be in your OneDrive. So if I'm going to do that, I'll go in my OneDrive here and go to my materials class. And you might have a subfolder, but this is going to be nameplate. And just put like your name on it. Alright, at that point I'm ready to set this up to the machine. So I'm going to go to machining and output. This is going to save the NC file for us. Your current driver down at the bottom here should be set to Techno HD. If it is not, you will need to go to driver. Once this opens up, you'll go to active drivers. You'll go down until you find Techno HD, open the plus, and you'll select IJ Arcs. So you would hit OK on that, OK again, and it should say Techno HD IJ Arcs. At that point, you're ready to say to file. and this is saving a .nc file. You want to save this to your project folder. So like I was in the materials folder, and I'm going to put my name, or put your name there. Put that first, and then maybe nameplate. Once you have this saved to your OneDrive, you also will need to save it to the flash drive to get it over to the CNC, and your instructor will help you set that up.